Summary of Summer of the 17th Doll by Lawler. At the beginning of the play, Olive, Pearl, and Bubba, who is younger than the other two, are waiting for Barney and Rue to arrive. For the past 16 years, Barney and Rue have spent their layoff season, the period of time during which they are freed from work in cane cutting for a few months, at Olive's house, which is owned by Emma, Olive's mother. Rue is seeing Olive, and Barney usually dates Nancy. But this year, Nancy got married and didn't show up for the layoff season, so Olive asked her coworker Pearl to go out with Barney. Bubba lives next door and was just a kid when folks lost their jobs. At the beginning of the story, Bubba is in the living room tying bows around candy canes, which is a practice during layoff season. Pearl is reading a magazine while wearing her favorite black dress. When Olive gets downstairs, she shows Pearl a picture of herself, Barney, Rue, Nancy, and herself all drunk at an amusement park. Pearl doesn't like it. Olive is adamant that Nancy made a mistake when she got married. Pearl says that Nancy made herself cheap in response and that Barney needs to be held. Bubba comes back from getting beer just as Pearl asks what the candy canes are for. Bubba feels bad when Olive tells him that it's just a joke between them and Rue and Barney, while Pearl keeps acting rude and superior. Bubba goes back home. Pearl looks at the picture one more time and says she's not going to get involved in a nasty mess. Olive scolds Pearl for acting like a good mother. Pearl has a daughter named Vera who is 18 years old, and tries to explain that the layoff season isn't bad, it's magical and wonderful. She gives Pearl a beer and tells her to be nice or leave. Barney walks into the house with Emma on his shoulder, and Rue follows behind. Rue and Olive kiss while Barney and Pearl talk to each other. Pearl says her name is Mrs. Cunningham, but Olive tells her to use her first name instead. Olive sends a message from Nancy to Barney. Olive is shocked when Barney tells her that Rue is broke because he quit his job 2 months ago. After hurting his back, Rue got into a fight with a new worker named Johnny Dowd. When Rue comes back from getting his bags, he looks embarrassed, and Olive is mad that Rue didn't come to her when he left. They talk things out and invite everyone else into the room to eat. Rue gives Olive her 17th Cupid doll, which is another tradition for the group during layoff season. Olive tells Rue that Pearl didn't like Barney's drinking or the fact that he tried to get into her bedroom late at night when she was getting ready for work the next morning. While the other dolls are pretty, Olive picks up the 17th one and says it's the most beautiful. Emma tells Rue she wants to lend her money when Olive leaves. Rue says no. He comes over to leave an envelope with pictures from Nancy's wedding. She tells Rue to give it to Barney and not let Olive see it. Bubba asks Rue if this year's leave season will be the same without Nancy. Rue tells her that it will be. After Bubba leaves, Barney goes downstairs and says he doesn't remember knocking on Pearl's door. Barney is shocked when Rue says he's going to look for work. The leave season is meant to be a break from work. Barney instead gives Rue money and says that Rue is only mad at Barney because he wasn't there with him when Rue quit his job cutting canes. Olive comes up to tell Barney that he needs to work on getting Pearl to stay with him. Rue huffs upstairs. She tells Barney that she doesn't like his de facto wives. He has 3 kids with 3 different women. Barney tells her that he wants to give love as well as receive it. He starts to tell Pearl the 3 things he believes a woman should have, but Olive walks in and stops him. Olive and Barney are sad that Rue is getting a job during the layoff season while Pearl gets her bag. As Olive, Rue, and Pearl leave, Pearl tells Barney to bring her bags to her room because she's going to stay. The people in the group sit quietly in the living room on New Year's Eve and watch the kids play outside. Barney wants to take them to the beach, but no one is interested. Barney's son is going to get a sweater from Pearl. Bubba walks in ready to go out and says she's going to a social dance but would rather stay home. She tells them to all go to the Morizes' house before they leave. Olive finally snaps when Pearl asks who the Morizes are and says they're Nancy's cousins, which means the group won't be going. A few minutes later, Pearl talks about a time when Olive called Barney and Rue eagles because they come down every year to mate, which makes everyone else feel bad. The things they've done and the places they've been haven't been as great as Olive said they would be, Pearl says. Olive tells Pearl to stop in a sarcastic way and plans to go to bed. But Barney suggests that they have Emma come in to play the piano so they can sing. Emma says okay, but when they start singing again, Emma is sure that someone is off key and gets angry when Olive tells her she's wrong. Beer is opened by Barney, and Olive and Pearl get food from the kitchen. While they aren't there, Barney tells Rue that he met the boys, other cane cutters from their job, by chance in the pub and asks Rue if she would like to go on a date with the boys and Johnny Dowd. It makes Rue even more angry when Barney suggests that they leave the next week to get a job picking grapes. Rue doesn't want anything to do with Johnny. Barney says that this year hasn't been fun without Nancy, but Rue says he has to stay for Olive. Barney starts pouring beers for everyone when Olive and Pearl come back. A toast is made to happy days and glamorous nights. Pearl chokes on her beer and laughs at the idea of a glamorous night. As the fireworks go off, Olive starts to cry and Barney looks very sad. The next day, after work, Rue is asleep on the couch when the others come home with a very drunk Barney. Olive is the first one to arrive. She wakes up Rue and tells him that Barney brought a friend. Rue sees Johnny Dowd as the friend when he goes to the window. Barney shows up on the porch with Johnny and Pearl by his side. He says hello to Rue and asks if they can shake hands. Rue finally says yes, and Barney tries to kiss Pearl with excitement. She goes upstairs to hide. Johnny says sorry to Rue, and the guys try to make plans to go out together. Rue finally agrees to go to the races the next day, but first she has to take a shower. Johnny, Barney, and Rue all want to go to the races together, but Barney thinks it would be better if they brought Pearl, Olive, and someone for Johnny. Barney calls out for Pearl and, when she comes back, asks if her little girl Vera can go with Johnny. Things don't look good for Johnny or Pearl. She says no, loses her cool, and runs upstairs. Barney then goes outside and comes back a few minutes later with Bubba, who is confused. Barney tries to get Bubba to agree to go to the races with Johnny, but Johnny won't let him. He wants to ask Bubba himself. Johnny knows that Bubba wants to go with him. Johnny doesn't understand what she means when she talks about the magic of the house and what it's like to be hired out. He'll never get it, she tells him. Johnny then asks Bubba what her real name is and she tells him it's Kathy. He then says goodbye and walks away. Rue is told by Bubba that she will be going to the races with Johnny the next day. Rue gets mad when he thinks Barney and Johnny worked together to get him to go on a date with them. He tells Olive to leave and yells for Barney. Rue then pushes Barney inside and tells him he did it to betray him and bring him down. Barney says that Rue is jealous of Johnny, but Rue steps in and says that Barney has done many bad things. They get into a fight when he calls Barney a leech. Olive and Emma come in and separate them. The men are fighting over one bad season, which makes Olive mad. Barney tries to get Rue to tell the truth about why he quit early. Olive makes everyone remember that Rue has a bad back. When Barney laughs, Rue grabs him quickly and tucks him down. He says that Johnny is a better person, which is why Rue left. Rue's back was never hurt. Rue then tells the group that women who have spent the night with Barney are now laughing at him and that Barney isn't even good enough to hold Nancy. Barney tries to hit Rue with a vase full of toys, but Rue blocks the throw and the vase breaks on the floor. Pearl is once again dressed in black and ready to leave in the morning. Olive points out to Pearl that the living room has been cleaned and is now empty, even of the toys that Rue gave Olive. Pearl asks Olive when Barney will be back and says she doesn't think Olive knows Barney at all. Pearl goes on to say that the house is nothing like what Olive had described it as. She tells Olive that she would feel the same way if she looked at things with adult eyes. Olive makes it sound like Pearl is to blame for how things are different this year. When they hear a knock, Olive opens the door for Jack. Barney says something about how decent Pearl looks, and Olive gets up to leave. Barney says that Pearl is going for the same reason Nancy did, she couldn't get what she wanted here. Pearl says she was never trying to be Nancy. Barney tells Pearl that she doesn't have the third quality of a good woman when Pearl tries to ask him about it. Pearl leaves after Olive comes back to say goodbye. When Rue comes down, she says that the dolls are gone. Olive says she couldn't stand to put up all the decorations again because they were all broken. She says she doesn't need any ornaments because she hasn't had any fun or laughing this summer. Rue tries to explain how hard it was to shake hands with Johnny, but Olive is still mad about the fight and how bad this break season has been. Emma arrives as Olive runs upstairs. She tells Rue that Nancy left on purpose while things were still going well. Emma is shocked when Rue asks her who's to blame for things going badly. She tells Rue that no one is really to blame because they are all getting too old for the time of year when people lose their jobs. After fighting, Rue starts to understand why this makes sense. Emma tells Olive that she is a stupid kid and says that Barney only started lying when Rue ignored him. She goes out, and Bubba and Barney argue about Johnny as they come in from the porch. Bubba wants to meet Johnny at a bar. Bubba says Johnny asked her to go on a date and told her his real name. She also says this is her chance to do what she's been watching for 17 years. She says she will not make the same mistakes as the others. Rue calls her Kathy and lets her go with Johnny. When Olive comes back, Rue tells Barney to go upstairs. Rue feels very hurt when Olive tells her it's time to settle up after 17 summers. Because of how Pearl talked and saw things, Olive says she felt low and cheap. Olive tells Rue that she didn't put the toys back out because she was mad, and Rue tells her that she acts like a child. He then tells her that he's not going back to cutting canes, he's going to stay. Rue tells Olive that only Barney is going because Rue wants to stay and marry Olive. Olive yells no, and tells Rue to go back to the sugarcane fields. He takes something from her and she yells at him to give it back. As Emma and Barney come in, Olive tears up and walks out. She tells the men to go away and not come back. Barney tells Rue that they no longer need to worry about Johnny and the others because they can find work anywhere. They should stick together. Rue gets mad and hits the 17th doll against the piano. He lets the doll fall when it is broken and ruined. Barney urges Rue to leave, Rue agrees. Before going, they look at each other and quietly recognize what they've lost.
About the author. Lawler was born on May 23, 1921, in the Melbourne town of Footscray. He quit school when he was 13 to work in a factory, but he still went to evening classes. He wrote his first play when he was 19, but Cradle of Thunder, the play he performed at a theater competition in 1952, got him a lot of attention. Many people became aware of him as an Australian writer after the opening of summer of the 17th doll 3 years later. He played Barney in both the premiere and the London production. His next home was in several European countries, and in 1956 he married actress Jacqueline Kelleher. They had 3 kids together. On his return to Australia in 1975, Lawler took a job as an associate director at the Melbourne Theatre Company. He agreed to finish a series about summer of the 17th doll, and Kid Steaks and Other Times are the result. Since 1980, he has been honored with the title of Officer of the Order of the British Empire, and a small theatre within the theatre that is owned and operated by the Melbourne Theatre Company is named after him.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.